Welcome to Cardboard Content, where we aim to develop our skills and grow the competitive Commander community. Hey guys, it's me, Benedict. Thank you for joining me here on another week. Last game of the event, but not just one game, we have two. Before we get into the game, Thanksgiving is here. I wanted to start by thanking everyone for the year of support, and we are now partnered with YouTube. Thank you everyone for the entire year of support. Looking forward to making more content for you all. Now let's get into the games. Our player one is Oscar in the upper right hand corner, playing Tymna with a starting hand of 7. Then we have Harrison playing Kraum-Kinnan with a starting hand of 3. Sam on Tasigur, starting hand of 7, and Lance with a starting hand of 6, playing Kinnan. Oscar starts us off with a Marsh Flats, then Harrison casts Git Probe, targeting Lance, plays a Luxury Suite, and then a Mana Vault. Passes turn to Sam. On Sam's turn, he plays Command Tower into a Soul Ring, and then passes turn to Lance. Lance plays a Windswept Heath, cracks it, gets a Tropical Island, and then casts Elvish Mystic. On Lance's end step, Oscar cracks his Marsh Flats for a Hollowed Fountain into play tapped, then plays Polluted Delta, and then passes to Harrison. Harrison plays Otawara, then casts a turn 2 Rhystic Study, and then passes to Sam. Sam plays Flooded Strand into an Underground Sea, then casts Devoted Druid. Rhystic Study on the stack. Oscar responds by cracking his Polluted Delta, gets an Underground Sea, then Oscar casts Orcish Bowmaster, which triggers Rhystic Study. Again, with the ETB, Oscar targets Lance's Elvish Mystic, then Sam pays for Rhystic Study. On Lance's turn, he plays Ancient Tomb, then casts his own Rhystic Study, triggering Rhystic Study. Harrison draws, Oscar pings Harrison for 1, and then he casts Pyroblast, targeting Lance's Rhystic Study. Rhystic Study gets countered. We move on to Oscar's turn. Oscar plays Overgrown Tomb, then casts Tymna. Everyone forgets the Rhystic Study trigger, unfortunately. He moves into combat. He attacks Lance and Harrison. Tymna triggers. Oscar loses 2, and then we move on to Harrison's turn. Harrison loses 1 to Mana Vault, then plays Manama, and passes turn to Sam. On Sam's turn, he plays Lotus Petal, triggers Rhystic Study, he pays, then casts Thassa's Oracle. It resolves, and he resolves the ETB to look at the top 2 cards. Then casts Neoform, sacrificing the Thassas, triggers Rhystic Study. Oscar's Bowmaster triggers, he pings Devoted Druid for 1. Harrison responds with a Swan Song, targeting the Neoform. We move on to Lance's turn, and he casts a Phyrexian Metamorph, triggers Rhystic Study. Rhystic Study triggers Bowmaster. Bowmaster's pings Devoted Druid again. Lance chooses Orcish Bowmaster and pings Oscar's Bowmaster. We move on to Oscar's turn. Oscar plays Otawara, then casts a Volatile Storm Drake and pays for Harrison's Rhystic Study, and then swaps with Lance's Orcish Bowmaster. Oscar moves into combat and attacks Harrison and Sam. Sam blocks with his Swan. Harrison takes 2, loses 1, and draws with Tymna. Then passes turn to Harrison. Harrison takes 1 for Mana Vault, plays Misty Rainforest, fetches for an Underground Sea, then casts Dark Ritual, then plays his Commander Tevesh, upticks Tevesh, and makes 2 throws. We move on to Sam's turn, and he plays his commander, Tasigur, and pays for Rhystic Study. Sam passes to Lance. Lance plays Aegea's Cradle, then casts Thrasios, triggers Rhystic Study. Harrison draws, Orcish Bowmaster triggers, and he targets a throw. Lance plays Arcane Signet, triggers Rhystic Study again. Orcish Bowmaster triggers and takes care of Harrison's other throw. We move on to Oscar's turn. He plays Scalding Tarn, moves straight into combat, and attacks with a 6/6 army and Tymna. Harrison responds, casting Rapid Hybridization on the 6/6 orc. Tymna gets through, and Oscar draws a card. Then Oscar casts Kitsa, triggers Rhystic Study. Oscar pays. Mana Vault pings Harrison on his turn. He plays a Gemstone Cavern, then casts Toxic Deluge, paying 5 life. Sam responds with Swan Song, triggers Rhystic Study. Harrison draws, triggers Orcish Bowmaster. He pings Tevesh, and then Harrison responds with a Fierce Guardianship, targeting Swan Song. Another Swan Song on the stack targeting Fierce Guardianship triggers Rhystic Study. Harrison draws, Orcish Bowmaster triggers, and pings Tevesh again. Then Harrison casts Deflecting Swat, redirects the counter spells so his Toxic Deluge resolves. Harrison upticks Tevish, makes 2 throws, and then passes turn to Sam. Sam draws and unfortunately straight passes to Lance. On Lance's turn, he plays a Prophet of Distortion, a miss trigger with Rhystic Study. We move on to Oscar's turn. He plays Flooded Strand, then casts Draneth Magistrate, triggers Rhystic Study. Oscar pays, and then passes turn to Harrison. Harrison gets 1 from Mana Vault Ping. He plays Volcanic Island, upticks Tevish, sacrificing a throw, then casts Ragavan, passes turn to Sam. On Sam's turn, he plays Carpet of Flowers, triggers Rhystic Study, he draws, moves into second main phase to trigger Carpet of Flowers, and then casts Ad Nauseam, triggers Rhystic Study again, and then Lance responds with a Dispel, triggers Rhystic Study again also, and Lance pays. Sam responds back with a Force of Will, pitching a Retraction Helix, triggers Rhystic Study again, and Harrison responds with a Flusterstorm. Sam passes to Lance. Lance untaps, draws, and then passes turn to Oscar. On Lance's end step, Oscar cracks Scalding Tarn for Tropical Island, and then Flooded Strand for a Scrubland. Also on Lance's end step, Oscar channels Colossal Sky Turtle, bringing back Orcish Bowmaster. We move on to Oscar's turn. He recasts Orcish Bowmaster, triggering Rhystic Study, and he pays. Lance responds by activating Prophet of Distortion and drawing a card. Oscar moves into combat with Draneth and attacks Harrison's commander, Tevish. Post-combat, on Oscar's end step, Harrison casts Valley Floodcaller, then passes turn to Harrison. Harrison takes 1 from Mana Vault, activates Tevish, draws 2, and he pings Valley Floodcaller. With the second ping on the stack, Harrison casts Mox Opal, triggering Valley Floodcaller, which gives him +1/+1 until end of turn. Then passes turn to Sam. Sam triggers his Carpet of Flowers, plays Gemstone Cavern, and does nothing again, unfortunately, and passes turn to Lance. Lance casts Monk's Diamond, triggers Rhystic Study. Harrison draws, Orcish Bowmaster triggers, and he targets Harrison. Lance pitches Yavimaya Coast to Monk's Diamond. Lance casts Clever Impersonator. Everyone misses the Rhystic Study trigger, and Lance copies Rhystic Study, and then passes turn to Oscar. Oscar moves into his turn, goes into combat, and attacks Harrison with a 4/4 Orb. Harrison responds with a Hullbreaker Horror, triggers Lance's Rhystic Study. He draws. Oscar pings Valley Floodcaller for 1. Then Harrison blocks the 5/5 Orc Army. Oscar casts Thrasios, triggers 2 Rhystics. Lance draws and Harrison declines. We move on to Oscar's end step, and he casts Dress Down, triggers both Rhystics. Harrison declines to draw again. Orcish Bowmaster triggers, and he pings Valley Floodcaller. Dress Down resolves. Then Lance casts Force of Vigor, targeting Rhystic Study and Mana Vault. Rhystic Study triggers, and Harrison misses it. We move on to Harrison's turn. He casts Chain of Vapor, targeting Draneth Magistrate, which triggers Lance's Rhystic Study. Lance draws, then Harrison casts Yawgmoth's Will, triggers Lance's Rhystic Study again, and then Lance responds with a Swan Song. Harrison upticks Tevish, sacrificing the Swan, draws 2, then casts Final Fortune, triggers Lance's Rhystic Study again. Lance draws, and then we move on to Harrison's final turn. On upkeep, Oscar casts Silence, triggering Rhystic Study. Lance draws, Orcish Bowmaster triggers, and pings Tevish again. Harrison then upticks Tevish, sacrificing his Hullbreaker Horror, and then draws 2 cards, which triggers Orcish Bowmaster, and then Oscar pings Lance's Prophet of Distortion. And then Harrison moves into his end step and loses the game. We move on to Sam's turn. He triggers Carpet of Flowers, then casts Mnemonic Betrayal, triggering Rhystic Study. Bowmaster triggers, Sam takes 1, then Sam casts Rhystic Study. Triggers Rhystic Study, Sam takes another ping, then casts Volatile Storm Drake. Rhystic Study triggers again, Lance draws, Orcish Bowmaster pings Sam once again, and then Oscar casts Stifle, triggering both Rhystic Studies. Lance gets pinged by this Bowmaster trigger, and then we move on to Lance's turn. Lance plays Rejuvenating Springs, casts Chromox, triggers Sam's Rhystic Study. He gets pinged by Orcish Bowmaster, pitches a bird to Chromox, then casts his commander Kinnan. Rhystic Study triggers, Bowmaster triggers, Lance takes an additional 1. Lance then casts Trophy Mage. Rhystic Study triggers again. He pays, then tutors up, and then casts Basalt Monolith. He reveals a Finale of Devastation, and Oscar and Sam call it quits there. Congrats, Lance, on pulling it off there in the end. Kinnan, always a threat early game or late game. End game summation. Harrison, the table should have been paying attention to Rhystic Study, but it is your card, so you shouldn't be missing any of the draws there. Oscar, I'm not sure what your reasoning was not to do the fetch. Maybe you're looking out for an Opal Agent, but I personally would gamble on it and optimize my draws, especially since you had another land at your hand at this point. Sam, that was a tough decision you had to make there. Maybe I would have waited another turn. You did have counter backup, so it is kind of hard to say. Lance, maybe let the Rhystic Study player take priority on this and you be the backup since they do have the draw engine. Harrison, this was a good opportunity for you to flash in that Valley Floodcaller and block that Drannith Magistrate and maybe cast a spell there to pump it and then take out that Drannith Magistrate there. Oscar and Lance, on this interaction, maybe a little table talk. You guys could have been a bit more optimal with the blocking here. I think you guys had the opportunity to kill the Hullbreaker Horror and maybe keep your interaction in your hand. Harrison, I don't think you had one out after the Silence Resolve. So drawing the two cards, causing the Bowmaster to trigger, affecting the game state in which you had no part in at this point. I personally would have avoided that. That's just my game etiquette at this point. Oscar, in my opinion, you were too all in on that Bowmaster. What would have happened if Sam would have got that Bowmaster? It still would have been on board controlling. Yes, your creatures might have got pinged here or there, but it wasted your interaction on something that wasn't going to win Sam the game. It was just a value cast at this point. And then holding up that Stifle for Lance would have been a bit more optimal. Alright guys, for our game 2, don't blink because it goes by real fast. Starting in the lower left hand corner, we have Doug with an opening hand of 7 playing Kenrith. Then we have Larry, starting hand of 7 playing Najeela. I'm on TNK with a starting hand of 6, and then Lance on Kinnan, starting hand of 4. Doug starts us off with a Flooded Strand into a tropical island, and then a Birds of Paradise. He passes to Larry. Larry plays a Windswept Heath into a Tundra into a Esper Sentinel. Pitches a Elvish Spirit Guide for a Mana Vault. On my turn, I played Misty Rainforest into a Volcanic Island, cast Gamble, triggers Esper Sentinel, and pitch a Rhystic Study. I pass the turn to Lance. On Lance's turn, he plays Mox Diamond, triggers Esper Sentinel, and then pitches a Forest. Then he plays Windswept Heath into a Tropical Island, then casts Finhorn Elves. Then he passes turn to Doug. On Doug's turn, he plays Ignoble Hierarch into a Noble Hierarch, then passes turn to Larry. On Larry's upkeep, Larry casts Mystical Tutor for a Ad Nauseam. Larry plays Scrubland, then sacrifices Esper Sentinel for Culling the Weak, then casts a turn 2 Ad Nauseam. Larry stops at 4 life. He casts Dark Ritual into a Lion's Eye Diamond into a Mox Opal, then casts Chromox, imprinting Chatterfang, exiles Simian Spirit Guide to cast Rite of Flame, casts Gamble, and discards his City of Traders. Then casts Underworld Breach. Then casts Brain Freeze. Brain freezes himself, casts Veil, sacrifices a Lion's Eye Diamond, Brain freezes himself again, and then casts Thassa's Oracle. Good job, Larry, on the turn 2 win. Good job again, Larry. This game was real fast like I was saying before. Sadly, no one had any interaction. Endgame summation, not much to go off of. Lance, maybe play the land first so you could have paid that Esper tax. If you enjoyed this content, please share and subscribe. Deck lists are listed down below. We have other social medias like TikTok. Check us out there. We also have YouTube shorts here on YouTube. Thanks again to everyone who has supported me and watched and shared my videos. It's gotten me to where I am at now, and we have so much more in store. More tournaments and live streams coming soon. Another big thanks to all my new patrons and the ones who supported me from the beginning. I really applaud everyone's generosity. Like these tier 2 content consumers: Big Yoda at 10 times, Marcus at 8, Dylan at 7, Troy at 7, and Rodrigo at 4. Now for our big tier 3 cardboard cutouts: Wong at 13, Matt at 12, Albert at 12, Joyner at 7, and Gwen at 2. Thank you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider joining us at patreon.com/cardboardcontent. I wish you all the happiest Thanksgiving and see you guys next time for more content.